Hello, I'm Father Andrew Apostoli. Welcome to Sunday Night Live. I'm taking Father Benedict's place tonight so that he could get a little bit of a vacation. And I'm very happy to be with you on this program tonight, which I think you're going to find very, very interesting. But Father Benedict will be back next week. In fact, his guest at the time is going to be Dr. Roy Hanu-Hart, a psychiatrist and the founder of the Info Faith Communications. So be sure to be looking in next Sunday night when Father Benedict will return, and I know he always has a very interesting and informative program. We hope we've got the same thing for you tonight, because we're going to be talking about a very special topic, a topic that is dear to me and to our special guest tonight. And that topic is about Our Lady of Fatima and her important message, so important in the world tonight and today. I'd like to welcome our special guest, who's a good friend of mine, Mr. Michael LaCourte. Mike,
Father,
welcome to the program.
Well, thank you so much. Always so much fun and a pleasure to be with you, Father.
Oh, very good. I know we've been doing a lot of work together.
Yes.
Doing talks in different places, and the people have been really responsive. People are very keen on the message of Our Lady.
Yeah, everywhere we seem to go, and it just seems to keep accelerating. The message of Fatima is really penetrating in a way that I haven't seen in many years, and more people are responding to it. And I think it's because more and more people are recognizing what Pope John Paul II recognized a number of years ago, that the message of Fatima is more important now than ever. And as we see the world change, we find hope in the message of Fatima.
Yes, I know when after he was shot and he was in the Gemelli Hospital and he read over the third secret and he saw the reference to the Pope who was shot, he saw that as really a reference to himself, his own experience with the attempted assassination, and he came to that conviction that Fatima was the only way to fulfill what Our Lady asked, was the only way to find that peace in the world, to end the evil that had spread, that Our Lady had talked about way back in July of 1917 at her apparition, that evil would spread with communism around the world.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's such a tremendous message for, all people, all times, and really a message that focuses on how to bring peace to the world, how to bring the salvation of souls to all of us. And, I don't know what could be more important to mankind than the salvation of souls and bringing peace to earth. And as we see the turmoil that that is all over us today, we turn to that message of hope. In so many ways, it has so many answers for us.
Yes, very, very much so. By the way, I meant to, when I introduced Mike, to mention that he's the executive director of the World Apostolate of Fatima, USA, and also the executive director of the Blue Army Shrine in Washington, New Jersey. That's one of my favorite places to go, Mike, as you know.
Yeah, and we're always so happy to have you there. And Father comes, so many times a year when all the pilgrims come, and we have beautiful crowds of pilgrims, sometimes hundreds, but usually thousands and thousands of pilgrims. And I know you were just there on the 13th of this month, and we had a wonderful celebration. And I know you'll be there this coming Saturday also, or the last Saturday of the month.
That's for Padre Pio,
Padre
right?
Pio.
Padre Pio Day is always one of those special days at the shrine. Now, isn't he is related to the World Apostolate of Fatima, the Blue Army, isn't he?
Yeah, he sure is. He's the spiritual father of the Blue Army. The Blue Army was formed over 60 years ago, and its mission was to bring the message of Fatima to all people, so that to help them learn the message, live the message, and spread the message. And it was a message that was also very important to St. Padre Pio, and he signed on very early to help us as best he could. And we celebrate his day every year, and many people come from all over to celebrate. And I'm so glad you'll be here this year with us to help us celebrate as well.
Well, I always look forward, as you know, I have my own personal love of Padre Pio. I was a Capuchin, and we live in the Capuchin spirit in our Franciscan renewal. And Padre Pio has always been such a great inspiration, such an outstanding saint of our time. And he, of course, his own love of Our Lady,
right,
and his realization. Boy, if you, with the message of Fatima, focusing on the need to pray for the salvation of souls, that's what he did, right? Remember?
Yeah. Right, very much so, and in such a tremendous way too. And as you say, he could do so many things at once. He could, and he was, he had the stigmata. He had such spirituality, and he brought that spirituality to bear to help so many people. And even after his life, there's so many stories of him after he has passed on as a saint, helping other people. So on. It's August 28th. I can't forget the date because it's my mother's 88th birthday. So August 28th this year is the day we'll be celebrating at the shrine.
Very good, very good. Yes, I'm looking forward to that. One time there's just in passing with Padre Pio, one time the Archbishop of Manfredonia in Italy, which is where Padre Pio lived, and San Giovanni Rotondo was in that archdiocese. He had gone up to see Pope Pius, I think it was Pope Pius XII, and Pope Pius XII said Pius XI, I'm sorry. He said to him, "What does Padre Pio do all day?" And he said, "He's taking away the sins of the world." And they estimate that in his lifetime, he heard about 5 million confessions.
Wow.
Isn't that a tremendous thing to bring the mercy of God to so many souls? What an example, too. We just finished the Year of the Priest, and he's a marvelous example. Well, Mike, you mentioned Pope John Paul II and his great contribution to Our Lady of Fatima, to that message, to how much he promoted that. But even our present Holy Father, he's really done so much, Pope Benedict the 16th. Where do you see the message, now with the present Holy Father? You mentioned about his 3 statements about the message of Fatima.
Yeah, well, it was Pope John Paul II who asked the World Apostolate of Fatima to do much more, and he actually elevated our status within the Church to the highest they have. So we're a pontifical organization, and that wasn't to reward us for what took place in the past. That was to add responsibility, to call us to action. And, of course, we've been working very hard to do that. Because, Pope John Paul II wanted us to help people learn the message, live the message, and spread the message. And Pope Benedict has just picked up right where Pope John has left off. And it was Pope Benedict who actually signed the document and the decree that brought us there. And actually, you were there on the day when that took place. And you were the first member of the newly organized World Apostolate of Fatima. It was such a thrilling time to be in Rome at the Vatican at that time when that took place.
It was a great sign of his acknowledging the importance of the message of Fatima and the work of the World Apostolate of Fatima. So I'm hoping that many people will be inspired through this program, even to learn more about the World Apostolate of Fatima. It's very important.
Well, we work very hard at it, and with Pope Benedict XVI coming to Fatima this year, on May the 13th, he was there, and of course there were over 500,000 people, and there would have been more, but they can't fit them in Fatima. That was a tremendous boost to the message of Fatima also. And he said many things, and many things happened there. But one very important thing he said is just a reminder to all of us. He made it clear again, just like Pope John Paul II said. He said the message of Fatima, don't believe it's fulfilled. There's still much that needs to be done, that we need to do, we need to continue to follow this message, and it's still so important in the world today.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you mention about it needs to be fulfilled, it doesn't mean with the Holy Father, he has done the consecration. That part has been fulfilled.
Yes.
Yes. But the part that we have to do, we have to follow through with prayer, sacrifice, the offering of our even our sufferings and a good Christian life, huh?
Yeah, I think, the message, there's so many ways to put the message of Fatima. If you ask Monsignor Guerra, the rector of the shrine who recently retired, he says the message of Fatima can be put in 2 words, prayer and sacrifice. And that, to me, is, a wonderful way to put it. But that focuses on what we're supposed to do, but not so much why we're supposed to do it. And in today's world, as opposed to perhaps when the message was delivered, back then you could simply say, well, Our Lady said pray and sacrifice, and people would do it because she said it. And the most profound miracles, I believe, since Jesus walked the face of the earth, took place, as you know, in October. And that miracle was so profound because the message was so profound. It was the only miracle ever predicted as to time and place. It was witnessed by 70,000 people. And God did that for a reason. He did that so we'd wake up and know that this message was so important to the future of mankind. And the way I explain the message is perhaps a little differently. I say that, heaven took a look and said, hey, guys, we're at a crossroads here on earth. There's 2 paths. One path leads towards the salvation of souls and world peace, and the other path leads towards souls that will be lost and towards wars so terrible that nations will be annihilated, and also towards the weakening of the church. And Our Lady tried to put us on the right path. She said, here are the things you should do to get on the right path, and if you get on this right path, there will be an era of peace, many souls will be saved, and the church will be strengthened. And we did that. There were millions and millions and millions of members of the Blue Army for so many years during the Cold War, and when things were apparently terrible to all of us, for those of us that lived through the Cold War, we felt that gun right at our head during that time, and we responded. We responded to that message, and we prayed that rosary daily, millions of people. And, Russia was then consecrated, and, almost immediately thereafter, Gorbachev has a change of heart, and without a shot being fired and with no intervention politically and militarily, communism ends. And it's not communism, but the Soviet Union forcing atheism on its people and then spreading that atheism throughout the world. That was the evil that Russia was spreading throughout the world. And that stopped, and stopped in a big way. But it's a continuing message. In today's world, we find ourselves turning our backs on God again and saying, God, we don't need you anymore. And of course, God says, well, you've got free will. If that's the way you want to do it, if you want to try it on your own, go ahead, give it a shot. And then everything gets all mixed up and jumbled up, and we get confused, and we just don't know the answer. And then we find ourselves in the trouble that we're starting to see ourselves in today. And that's why I think we see people turning back to the message of Fatima, turning back to God. We're looking for answers, and we're starting to realize that we're not finding those answers in Washington. We're not finding those answers in the places where we would typically look. So we're coming back to God, and that's my prayer, that that's what we do.
Yes, that's so important. Mary's message, Mike, is like a bright light in a darkness.
Yeah.
And so many people today, they're forgetting God. There's a religious indifference that seems to be spreading. Formerly Christian countries people have just fallen away from their faith.
Yes.
This progressive secularism that we see, even here in America, we see it intruding into our life. Take God away. I remember I was... I must have been selling some of my books and tapes, and somebody must have, given a $20 bill. And on the back of the $20 bill, it says, "In God we trust." Do you know what someone stamped on that? It said, "Take God off my money."
Yeah.
I think they got it wrong. It wasn't we who gave the money to ourselves. It's God's blessing that we have an economy. It's God's blessing that we have the things that we need to find happiness in this world. Even work. Look at how many people are unemployed today.
Yes.
because we're forgetting God, we're walking away, and Our Lady was calling us back. And that's why I think, that, and that's why, that message is still so important. Like you said, the words of Pope John Paul II, Fatima is more important now than it was in 1917.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that colossal miracle that you referred to, the miracle of the sun, seen by 70,000 people, so important.
Yeah, and sometimes it's difficult for us to separate the effects of the problem from the cause. And we think all of these things are the problem itself, but they're really the effects. The cause is the lack of spirituality, turning our backs on God. And we don't do it in an evil way. We don't do it, the way the Russian government did during that time before
imposing,
it woke up.
Imposing atheism and all,
Exactly. It was just this sort of subtle, insidious thing that sort of happens. And we are good people. We do pray. We do try to help one another. In America, we're the first ones to help everybody out.
That's true.
But at the same token, we take prayer out of the schools. We can't have Christmas plays anymore in the schools. The culture has changed so much just in one lifetime.
And that's why we got to go. Mike, we're going to have to take a break now, but we'll be right back. So don't go away and start thinking about the questions that you want to call into us later on in the program. Welcome back. I'm Father Andrew Apostoli, sitting in tonight for Father Benedict Rochelle, who's getting a well-deserved little vacation. And our special guest tonight is Michael Corte, who is the Executive Director for the World Apostolate of Fatima, USA, and also Executive Director for the beautiful Blue Army Shrine in Washington, New Jersey. We've been talking about, Mike, with the importance of Mary's message, seen, as you summed it up so well there, with the words prayer and sacrifice. And Our Lady did warn us about the evils that would begin in Russia and then spread around the world. And of course, we're somewhat familiar, maybe a lot of our viewing audience is familiar with the atrocities against religion and the Russian people and other peoples throughout the world that have been imposed through communism and so on. But now we begin to see some changes after the consecration by Pope John Paul II. And I know, Mike, you've been to, I was with you on one occasion, beautiful visit to Kazan. Maybe, I know you've had a lot of contacts with them. What are some of the things you've seen, how the things are changing there, from an imposed atheism and almost attempt to annihilate religion? How do you see things changing?
Yeah, it's, I've just been so blessed, Father. It's been amazing that I've had, firsthand experience in going to Russia and seeing phenomenal changes. And I also grew up during the Cold War era, so I experienced that as well. And the difference just amazes me and amazed me when I first saw it. And, a lot of it, I would say, would be coincidental, but knowing the Blessed Mother and what happens in heaven, you sort of have to sit back and wonder. But I was blessed to meet a man at Domus Pachas, which is the hotel we have in Fatima, Portugal. Just coincidentally, it was the international meeting of the World Apostolate of Fatima when we're in over 100 countries throughout the world, and every 4 years the delegates from those countries meet. And they met there off-season, and we were closed. And this gentleman was in the hotel with his father, and I asked the manager of the hotel, why he was there, because we were basically closed. And Carlos, the manager, said, "Mike, he's the Russian." And I said, "Oh, the Russian." And I said, I've got to get to know this guy a little bit, because the message of Fatima has a lot to do with the Russians and also with the Muslims, as well as, that's why I believe it's a message for the world. So we started talking, and Dmitry is his name, and he asked me what I do. And I said, I work for the Blue Army. And he goes, "The Blue Army?" He said, "I love the Blue Army." And I'm just amazed, because, one guy from Russia, how can he hear of the Blue Army? Well, he sat in with the negotiations with the Holy Father, and we don't have enough time to go into it, but there's a very special icon, the icon of Kazan. And Kazan is a city in Russia of 1 million people. and the icon of Kazan is the most revered religious article in all of Russia.
Of Our Lady, huh?
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's the Madonna and the Christ child, and it was smuggled out of Russia during the communist era, and the Blue Army bought it to protect it from falling into private hands, and then we gave it to Pope John Paul II, who prayed for every day on that icon in his private prayer room for two things. He prayed for the communism to end so the icon could go back to Russia, and he prayed that the Orthodox Church would come back home again. He called it the two lungs of the Church, so they would be breathing in harmony again.
Yes.
And Cardinal Kasper delivered the icon of Kazan to the Patriarch, the then Patriarch Alexis II of the Russian Church. And Dmitri said to me he was filming throughout the travels of that icon, and he wanted to film what took place with the icon. So he came to the Blue Army Shrine, and I just happened to say, Dmitri, what is it that Kazan is like, just out of interest? And he said, Mike, Kazan is a city, and it's 1 million people, and it's a beautiful city. Everybody lives in harmony, and it's half Orthodox and half Muslim. And I'm going, gee, Dmitri, that's got to be tough. I can't believe that you live in harmony, because I'm just thinking what's going on over here. Mm-hmm. And we even have to thank Mother Angelica for this, because we were simultaneously working on preparing for One World Praying for Life and Peace, which we were going to air throughout the world through the graces of Mother and the help of EWTN. Right. And I said to Dmitri, we would love it if we could film the Muslims praying along with the Orthodox and the Catholics and everybody else in Kazan, all the religions, praying with us for life and peace, and then air it on EWTN. And he said, Mike, we'd love to. He didn't actually say anything, but then he called me up and said, Mike, I want you to come to Kazan, and these are the days I want you to come. So that was my first visit to Kazan, Russia, and my first visit to Russia. And the first place we go is Moscow, and I walk through Red Square, which of course is a scary place in my mind, where all the military equipment used to be. And I see the guardhouse, and the person I'm with is an attorney, and he turns to me and he says, Mike, there's something I got to tell you. I said, what? He said, well, I'm an attorney, but what you don't know is I tried a very high-profile case in Russia, and I won. And they told me never come back to Russia again. and we're on our way with the invitation from the Patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church to his liturgy, and the guardhouse is getting, ever imposing as we walk up to it, and we open the door to the guardhouse to look inside, and it's a prayer room. There are people praying in there. And we go in, and it's just filled with churches and people having so much fun. I must have counted 13 brides taking pictures there, and it was just a celebration. So this just completely started to shift my mind about what was going on in Russia. Then we went to Kazan, and I didn't know it, but it was the first annual celebration of the return of the icon of Kazan to Russia. And we go in there to the celebration, and I didn't realize it till it was over, but half the people that attended that celebration were Orthodox, and the other half were Muslim. And the Muslims were in there, celebrating not only the return of the icon of Kazan, but also showing their love for Mary.
Yeah, they have a great love, don't they? Yeah. And you see that, and that's why Mary, especially Our Lady of Fatima, with the name Fatima linked to Muhammad's oldest daughter, his favorite daughter, and Mary comes in with that image. I'm sorry, but I know. No. But I know you were getting to our pilgrimage.
And I'm going to skip a lot of the story, but I met with the mayor of Kazan. He asked me to meet him in both Fatima and in Lourdes, and we had a conversation.
Now, he was Muslim, wasn't he?
Muslim. Yeah, the mayor was Muslim. And the mayor asked me some questions, and we talked about building a Catholic church in Russia. And I guess there were some other people and some other things that took place. But you and I took the first pilgrimage ever to Kazan, Russia, because I just had to share this experience. Yeah. And we had no idea. We were just going to these beautiful mosques, and they let us in the mosques, the women and the men and everybody else, and the Orthodox churches. And it's the Russian government that is building these mosques. And then we the bus stops, and we get out, and we're in this building, and they say, this is the Catholic Church that we're building in Kazan.
Yes.
And it's this huge church, and there's only 300 people in Kazan that are Catholic.
Yeah.
And it's this giant church, and Father Andrew led us with the first prayers, the first rosary ever in this church that was under construction.
Yeah, that was a wonderful moment to think that the statue, the icon of Our Lady would be right near there, and that Catholics would come. It is amazing how Mary sort of, Mike, it's like she goes above the differences.
Yes.
You know, the Catholics, the Orthodox, the Russian Orthodox, and the being Christians, and then the Muslims. She can bring us together. There's no fighting. There's no enmity. And you know, what struck me when we venerated the image was the Muslim women and you know, who came and prayed before that image.
Yes.
I remember one of the ladies on our pilgrimage, Mike. She shared that she had spoken to this Russian priest, and she asked him, she said, "What does it mean to you to have the icon of Our Lady of Kazan back?" And I'll never forget the answer he gave her. He said, "It means that now, once again, our faith can flourish in Russia."
Yeah.
Mary's there. She's a bond. She's bringing together, you know, these people, and that's how, you know, she can be the means of peace in the world. You know, we wish that everyone would know Christ. We wish the Muslim people would come to know Christ as the Son of God. Bishop Sheen said, when he talked about the Muslims and Our Lady in his beautiful book on, you know, the world's first love, he said, maybe someday, because they venerate her, they believe in her Immaculate Conception, they believe in her virgin birth. He said, maybe someday they will realize that they venerate her so much because her son is not only human, but he's also divine. But that would be a great grace, huh? But Our Lady could get it. She's the one, you know, that can do that. So, but Mike, I know recently there was weren't there Russian people at the shrine when the Holy Father was there in May?
It just continues, Father, and there's so many things we left out, but the spiritual resurgence that's taking place in Russia as we watch the spiritual decay throughout the rest of the world, you know, it's just amazing. More and more people, more and more churches in Russia. The icon has really brought the dialogue between the Catholic Church and the Russian Orthodox Church and the other Orthodox churches to much closer proximity than it's been for hundreds and hundreds of years. Then when the Holy Father was in, actually the cover picture of Soul magazine shows the huge crowd. Soul is the magazine that we offer all of our people to help them learn, live, and spread the message of Fatima, and we try to keep it current with what's going on and also bring in what came in the past. And we were there when the Holy Father was there. And among all of these thousands and thousands of people, there's the sign that we saw, and the sign was painted by a group of Russians, and it said, "Mary, thank you so much for what you have done for the Russian people."
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Mike, you know, remember Bishop Sheen used to say that he said when he would compare the Russian people oppressed under communism and the Western world where we had our freedom, but we weren't living the faith. And he used to say that, he said, the Russians, they have the cross. The Russian people under communism, they have the cross. You know, they're suffering and persecution and so on. He said, but they have no Christ. But we have Christ, he said, in the West, but we don't have a cross. He said, will we find the cross before the Russian people find Christ? And you know, it looks like that where Russia, Our Lady warned us at Fatima that the communism would spread its evil message of atheism around the world, it's almost like now faith is rising up again. They're purified, you know, for the faith, and that's coming to us. We need the faith that they're finding because we're losing it.
And it's not only the people, it's the government itself. I mean, it was the government that I believe Our Lady was referring to when she said that, you know, Russia would spread her errors throughout the world. It wasn't the Russian people. It was the Russian government. And the Russian government today is just amazes me at every turn. Not only are they building churches and mosques and Catholic churches and Orthodox churches, but they're asking their schools to teach theology. And then most recently, on June 1st, the president of Russia signed a new bill into law. And what he said was to the Russian people, I want you not to work on a certain day every year, July 28th. And I want you to go home, and I want you to realize that God exists and He's part of our country.
Right. He singled out the Russian Orthodox Church,
yes,
which has been thriving now, starting to thrive once again. And people who say, well, after the consecration was made by Pope John Paul II, are there any changes? Yes, there are dramatic changes. We just don't hear about them on normal media. You're not going to hear about those things, but great changes are taking place, and the faith seems to be reviving. And I think Mary has chosen to let these people whom she loves very much. Remember, she was concerned about it. And even our Lord, when the consecration was not made by Pope Pius XI, remember he told Sister Lucia, he said, pray for the Holy Father. He said, because he will make the consecration, but it will come late. And it did. It did, unfortunately. But he said, Russia will be saved, he said, because it's in the hands of my mother. And isn't that a great thing? Huh? And Russia was called Holy Russia and had a great love of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And I think what you saw and I saw, the little bit I saw there on that pilgrimage, just impressed me. These are wonderful people. You don't want to live there in the winter. Remember that lady? The lady who told us it got to 115 degrees Fahrenheit below zero. But for our consolation, she told us it's colder in Siberia. It gets to 125 degrees below zero. I wouldn't advise you to go there in the winter, but you may be even like to take a pilgrimage to Kazan someday. But we got to take a break now because it's time for our break. But we'll be right back. We hope you've got a lot of questions. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our program tonight, Sunday Night Live. Again, I'm Father Andrew Apostoli, sitting in tonight for Father Benedict Rochelle. He'll be back next week. He's getting a well-deserved rest and vacation. Well, we come to our final segment of the program tonight, and we're going to take our questions. We see we've got a call from Elaine. Elaine, where are you from, and what's your question or your comment?
I'm from Arlington, which is between historic Lexington and Cambridge, and I just wanted to say that once a year we have a public rosary right on the steps of the Town Hall of Arlington, of which I'm very proud. But I'm sad to say that many of the Portuguese churches do not talk about Our Lady of Fatima as much as they should, and I think it would be a great idea to have more public rosaries. We did in our church. We had them walking around the grounds of our church like they do in EWTN, and I think this would inspire more people, because the main idea of Fatima was to pray the rosary, and I think if there were more public rosaries, this would inspire people who might have become a little lax on the subject.
Well, Elaine, that's a good observation to want more churches and people to be praying the rosary. You're right. You are right that in her 6 apparitions at Fatima, the Blessed Mother, the only thing she asked for in all 6 of them was to pray the rosary every day. And that's a very important part of fulfilling Our Lady's request for prayer. Wouldn't you say that, Mike?
Yeah, and actually, in order to be a member of the apostolate, that's one of the things that people do. They take a pledge with Our Lady saying they're going to pray the rosary every day. And the other thing we do to bring the awareness of the Rosary to the world, and with the help of Mother and EWTN, is every year or two we hold an event we called One World Praying for Life and for Peace. And we broadcast 100 countries throughout the world, or 150 countries and 150 million households praying the Rosary. And you're always part of that event, Father, and it's so wonderful. And we bring the Rosary to people throughout the entire world that way, in such a public way. And then also through the volunteers that we have. There are actually millions and millions of members that are always out there asking people to pray that Rosary every day. And it is Our Lady that asks for that. And it's sad to say that the numbers aren't increasing from what they were in the old days. They're increasing from what they were a year ago. Yeah. But, you know, the spirituality is coming back, and that is so encouraging.
Yeah, that's what Elaine said. She said we should spread to more churches. That's very good. And, of course, Mike, they could find out about belonging to the World Apostolate of Fatima, right, by checking the Fatima website.
Yep.
I think we have the website that could be put on the screen for the people to be in touch there, and even learn about Soul Magazine and about your film that's going to be coming out very soon. It's not available yet. Don't call religious, don't call EWTN the religious store there, but it will be available soon. You can get information again off of the World Apostolate of Fatima website. Yeah. We have another call here from Steve. Steve, where are you from, and what's your question or your comment?
Yeah, my name is Steve. I'm from New Hampshire. My question is why, you talk about Fatima here, why is it that just 3 children saw the lady herself and heard her voice? There was thousands of witnesses, but you have to be very careful on how you use that word witness. You know, they were all standing there. Of course, they were all witnesses to see 3 kids standing in a grotto, but none of those people, thousands of people, saw Mary. Thousands of those people didn't hear the voice. There might have been something that happened to the son, but that doesn't mean anything.
Well, Steve, one thing you have to remember, the children, it was about the June apparition, when the children the message had first spread among the townspeople there in Fatima, that the children had seen, they called her a beautiful lady from heaven. And Lucia, who was the only one who actually, in all of the apparitions, the only one who spoke to the Blessed Mother, she said, "What is your name, and would you show us a sign that you're really appearing to us, because the people are questioning that." And that's when Our Lady promised. She said, I will give a sign in October, and that was, we referred to that previously in the show here, about the great miracle of the sun that was dancing for 10, 15 minutes. That's what they called it, dancing in the sky. Then they actually saw it hurling down to the earth. They actually thought it was going to consume the world in fire. Everybody saw that. There was no mistaking that. Even people who came to be skeptics and so on. Remember that, Mike?
Yeah, and actually, Father, on One World Praying in October, I promised people a film on the miracle of the sun. And I have to apologize. It takes much, much longer than I thought to get it out, but it is finally at the people that make the copies of it. It took a long time. And the reason I promised people this film is, like the gentleman that called, we call it the miracle of the sun, so we think that's all there is the sun moving in the sky. But there was much more to this miracle. And the people that signed up will get a copy of it before October 13th of this year. And we have an interview that was done by a gentleman by the name of Dominic Reyes. We found it was lost forever. And this is what I say about the message of Fatima. All of a sudden, so many things are coming together.
Yes.
This new film that we just finished on Fatima.
And I'm working on my book.
Right.
Hopefully it'll be out in October, a brand new book on Fatima.
Yep. And actually, you're in the film, and Father Grochel's in the film, and the people in Fatima, Portugal are in the film. And it really goes into detail about it. But this film, The Miracle of the Sun, was filmed in 1957, and the people that witnessed the miracle of the sun go into much more detail, and it dealt with this torrential downpour of rain on that day. And people were soaking wet and scared as could be when the sun started falling to the earth. And they fell into the mud, and they were praying in the mud because they thought it was the end of the world. And their clothes were full of mud. They were full of mud. And then all of a sudden, the sun receded, and this wind blew. It blew real hard, but not a leaf was rustled on the trees. And then they looked around, and they saw each other, and they looked at the ground, and the ground was dry as could be, just as dry as this floor here. And this is after they had seen puddles of 3 and 4 inches of water. And they looked at each other, and the gentleman, Dominic, says, our clothes were as clean as if we had just come out of the laundromat. So this miracle that God performed wasn't subtle.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't subtle at all.
Yeah. Very good, Mike. Mike, we have another call here.
Sure.
A call from John. John, where are you from, and what's your question or your comment?
Oh, yes, Father. One was answered. A little bit of humor. Your beard these days is matching your habits, so it's a good deal. For Mike, I would ask, there's an organization, it's been a while. I don't even know if I'd want to say their name if I could remember it, but they were trying to spread the message of Fatima. And not only did I hear that the priest that was like the spiritual headship of the group didn't obey his bishop, but it was just like a gloom and doom thing. And I don't think Fatima is gloom and doom. And, I've been a secular Franciscan for 15 years. I'm not a baby Christian. So I wondered if you're aware of any group like that and what the Blue Army does. And thank you. Bye-bye.
The only thing I'd like to say is that the World Apostolate of Fatima is the only pontifical organization. And what I mean by that, it's a pontifical association, which means it's officially part of the church under canon law. And the reason Pope John Paul II elevated our status was to help people rid themselves of any confusion. Everything we have ever done has been in complete communion with church teachings. Anything that we ever publish has the imprimatur on it. So you can look to this apostolate for the correct information on Fatima.
Yeah. There are many people who have different opinions and so on. And some people are quite confused, and we hope to try to dismiss that. And one of the things in my own book that I've been working on, which is not available yet, but will be available, and we hope to be able to announce that on EWTN sometime, to try to dismiss these confusion. People are have different ideas and so on, but try to address those questions. We have another call here from John. John, where are you from, and what's your question or your comment, John?
Oh, yes, Father Andrew and Mike, I have 2 questions. I'm from Michigan. If the consecration of Russia had already taken place, why is there not an end to wars and the way the present situation is at this time? I thought peace and an end to everything should have taken place. Also, why are so many popes, past and present, so reluctant into revealing the third secret? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, John, I think both of your questions there relate to some of the confusion that people have. See, one of the things, let's go back to your question about the consecration, if it was made, why are there wars, and so on. You have to remember 2 or 3 things. Number one, the consecration of the nation of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, which was done on March 25th, 1984. Read my book. Mm-hmm. That was done, but consecration is one thing. It's a dedication of the nation to Our Lady, right? Mm-hmm. But conversion is a change of heart. Now, gradually, we've been seeing this. Even Gorbachev, after he met with the Holy Father, took down the Soviet flag at midnight of Christmas, 1991. And raised up the Russian flag. That meant the Soviet Union was over. But the change in the hearts of the people, remember, you have 3 generations. The communists were in charge of Russia for 75 years. Indoctrination, false teaching, lack of teaching. So people, in order to have a conversion, people have to learn about their faith, right, Mike? And then, so it's not going to be easy. But remember one other important thing: wars, as Our Lady told little Jacinta, wars are the punishment for sin. What about our nation? What about our abortions? What about our euthanasia, the destruction of human life? What about the immorality so prevalent in American society, Western Europe, so many places in the world? That's got to have conversion also, or there can never be that full peace. But it's coming. As I mentioned earlier in the program, it seems that the resurgence of faith and devotion in Russia is going to help reconvert the rest of the world. And it's funny, isn't it? They sent out the evil of atheism and secularism. Now they're regaining the faith, and we have secularism and atheism, and that's it. And the same thing with the third secret. Read my book. I think you'll find some very interesting facts in there about the third secret.
Yeah. And this concept of war, too, Monsignor Guerra, the rector emeritus of the Shrine in Fatima, Portugal, his perspective is that we are in the era of peace. If we remember when this secret, so-called secret, and secret isn't secretive, it's just the message was given at one time, and it was not meant for that time, so it was told later. But it was given in the context of World War I, and then it talked about World War II, and Our Lady was foreseeing World War III, which was going to be this huge, devastating war with nuclear arms that weren't even foresawn in 1917. I mean, we didn't even know about nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons. But she was talking about the annihilation of nations at that time, this huge possibility. So for those of us that lived during the Cold War, we thought of this war as the real war to end all wars, not World War I, the war to end all wars, and that would be the end, but this would be almost the end of humanity. And that didn't happen after the consecration, after the millions and millions of rosaries. So the world war was averted. This concept of there would be no war or strife in the world, I mean, that's foretold in the Bible when Jesus comes, the second coming of Jesus, 1,000 years. But I don't know that Our Lady was talking about every little war and skirmish, especially since we haven't followed the message of Fatima. We haven't done our part. We can't expect the bishops just to do their part, and we can go around, do whatever we want, and ignore the rest of the message, and everything's going to be right. That wasn't the message of Fatima.
Right, because she kept asking for prayers and sacrifice for the conversion of sinners. That's the key, I think.
Yeah.
She said, if people heed my message, she said this in July of 1917, she said, if people heed my message, many souls will be converted, and an era of peace will be given to the world. The Pope will make the consecration. Yeah. That's what he said. And that's why we have to do our part. The Pope has done his part. Yeah. So if we keep focusing on the Pope and worrying about what he's doing or not doing, we're mistaken. Yeah. We need to be able to look at our part. Are we living those good Christian lives? Are we offending God? Remember, one of the great pleas of Our Lady after the great miracle of the Son was when she said to the children, tell the people to stop offending my Son. He's already been so grievously offended.
Yeah. And who do you turn to find out if the consecration has taken place? Normally you would turn to the Pope, the highest authority in the Church. But the Pope turned to Sister Lucia and said, Sister Lucia, has it been done? And the first two times the consecration took place, Sister Lucia said, no, Holy Father, it hasn't been done. But when Pope John Paul did it on March 25th, she said, yes, Holy Father, it has been done. And the co-founder of the Blue Army, John Hafford, sat down with her shortly after the consecration, and they had a talk about it. And she said, the consecration was done, but it was done 55 years later than it was supposed to have been done.
Yes.
So Russia had a chance to spread many errors.
Yeah, that's the sad thing, yeah.
And we also, like you point out so well, Father, we have our part to do. And that's why this message is so important today. We're not doing our part, so we're slipping back again. And we can fall right into that problem that we had in the past.
That's right.
And nations are, again, on the precipice of perhaps being annihilated if we don't wake up.
That's right. We have to. Mike, we have another question here.
Sure.
We have a question from Ray. Ray, where are you from, and what's your question or your comment?
Good evening, Father. I'm Ray from the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And my question is, are there any survivors from the miracle of the dancing sun that are still around, and do they comment on the miracle? I know they're pretty old by now, but are they around? Have you located any? Thank you.
It's a very interesting question. Father and I are gathering the best of the best people, the people that actually lived the message of Fatima and grew up with the people that did survive and heard around the kitchen table the stories about the miracle and what took place. And we're holding a conference in Fatima, Portugal on March 23rd through 30th of this year, and we're inviting people to attend. I'm sorry, 2011. Well, the next March.
Next year, yeah.
Yeah, whatever March comes up. I've talked to the people that are as close to surviving as you have, and they're close to these people, and I've been graced with that. So we're offering that opportunity to other people as well. But unfortunately, mostly what remains now are actual footage, films that we have of people that talked about it back then. But I don't know of many survivors. It was 1917, so they would have been very, very, very young if they did see it at that time.
Yeah, they'd have to be almost 100 years old.
Yeah,
because we're coming close to that 100-year period. You know, it's interesting. I was in a hotel in Fatima one time with a pilgrimage group, and the man who owned the hotel had a photograph. And he showed me the photograph. It showed people all looking, let's say they were all looking in this direction. He said to me, "Father, the sun is always over here." And that's how far the sun was moving laterally in the sky. It's just amazing. He said normally you would always see the sun over here, over here, but all the people were looking in that direction.
Yeah, and we all know how careful the church is about this. There are thousands and thousands of claims every year about these kinds of things, but for the church to approve, it takes a lot of time and a lot of study, and is very rare.
Yeah, and you had said earlier too, Mike, that for a miracle of this greatness, you just have to realize that God foretold it. The magnitude was just tremendous. Mike, we're running almost out of time here. We've got a prayer to do, and we'll do that so that everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this program tonight. Got a lot out of it. There's so much to learn about Fatima, and it seems, as Mike said earlier, this is the time when these things are coming to the surface. Let us pray. Almighty God, you sent your mother to Fatima to give a message for peace and blessing in the world, to strengthen us in living good Christian lives, and for others to live good lives according to your law. Help us to find peace. Amen. Amen. Well, we'd like to take this opportunity now to ask you who are watching in our viewing audience here with EWTN, this network brings so many vital messages to so many people, not only through television, but through the radio and internet and the like. But it also has to depend on your goodness and support. I'm sure Mother Angelica would want your prayers for the network and all those who are involved with this wonderful Eternal Word television network. But besides your prayers, they need your financial support. Remember, this is supported by the free will offerings of God's people. So please be as generous as you can. As Mother used to say, I think between the electric bill and the telephone bill, remember EWTN. God bless you all. Peace.